So last time I talked about the airbag setup on the Wagon was 1, 2, 3, almost 4 months ago. And it looked like this. It sat in the back of the car looking like that until 3 weeks ago when I got back from Indianapolis, and I tore out the rubber mounts in the back of the car for the coilovers, and that was my own fault, which you'll see in just a minute. But I took that opportunity to finally put the bags on. Those bags showed up the week before Indianapolis. They took 3 months longer than they were supposed to, but they did show up and they do work. So here's how I went from that red Craftsman air compressor tank to the sweet setup I have now that I showed off at Cars at the Station in Detroit this past weekend. So take a look. Big shout out to Ruin Air for sponsoring the build. There's another company that's kind of like me, small shop, one guy putting all this stuff together. So I'm a big fan of his, and let's go through what he sent me and how it's different than what's on the market now and why I think that's awesome. First of all, having your own branded tape is pretty slick. Maybe I need some branded tape. Ooh. Foam packaging, look at that, sick. This is the remote. These are the pressure sensors. What's cool about this, I guess I'll get to this in a minute, is that you have one for each corner of the suspension, right? What's cool about his setup is that it's also a fifth one that controls the compressors instead of having like a dummy 2-wire switch on the tank itself. All right. He sent a clear cover. This is pretty sick. And then he sent it with a wooden cover, which is also pretty baller. And here's all the wiring. I'll pull this out and take a look. Okay, so this is just way cool. So this is the first thing that caught my attention about his product is if you know anything about air suspension, you normally get like a little dummy remote with just a couple buttons that kind of look like trash, in my opinion. This one's really cool because it's a touchscreen and it's wireless. It has a MagBag charger on it, so you can do the magnetic charging thing. So I'm gonna make a custom mount to put this in the car. But this is really cool. It's 3D printed case, which is pretty sweet in my opinion, because obviously that's what I do. And it looks like he's using a cool like glass fiber infused filament. So this is really cool. Big fan. Like you could get out at a car meet and walk away and then hit low. And like you can do that on the phone apps for the other ones, but like I don't want to have to use my phone for that. That's kind of dumb. And then this is the brains of the operation. So remote to here to these and the valve body. So the valve body, normally like when you get like an airlift or an AccuAir or something, this box here is built into the top of the valve body, and I think it's really cool that to make this more affordable, you just source a generic valve body, which is like $80, and then he sells you this whole setup runs like $600. But if you buy like the AccuAir or the Airlift one, it's all integrated in one unit, and that's all good and great, except that it's like $1,300, and that's ridiculous for what it is, because underneath they're the same solenoids, so why does it matter? So this is really cool. Basically, circuit board, right? Controller for circuit board. He's got his own little harness here. Again, big fan of the 3D printed connector stuff. So if we plug this in here, boop, that's where that'll go. He's got his logo in the connector. That's pretty slick also. And then these go to the pressure sensors, and they're all labeled, so this harness looks pretty sweet. So that these go to here in the valve solenoids to control pressure in the bags, and then all of these are labeled, and they go into the valve solenoid. So I think technically you can use a different valve body, and you just have to wire this up to still work, but they're all labeled, and he has some really good wiring diagrams on the website. So, and then he included a charging cable, data connection cable for the remote. And then I'm excited about this because I'm going to take this controller box and take the lid off, and it's going to have a custom mount inside of the cover for the air tank, and then I'll use his cover plate to sandwich it back together. And I think I'm probably going to run the clear one because I like circuit boards look cool. I'm an engineer. I'm about it. So anyways, I think this is a really sweet product. I think in the next, not in the next video, but in a week or so, I will get all of this wired up. I got to put a little relay harness together to power the compressors. This controller box just tells them to turn on, but it's not going to handle the high amperage load that the compressors need, and none of the other, brands do that either, so that's fine. But I got to put that together, and then I'll get it all in the car, and I'll do an overview video of it. And I think, yeah, another cool small company that you should take a look at if you're trying to do air suspension, and especially if you're trying to do it affordably and different. So, big fan. Alright, looks like I'm going to cut this bracket off first. The way I have this sitting in the car, it's at a slight angle, so just trying to measure this is going to just mess me up. But anyways, take my little die grinder here. I'm just going to cut through these 3 welds and pop this off, and then I'll grind it down so it's smooth. That way when it goes out for powder, sandblast and powder coat, it looks pretty good. And just like painting the engine bay and smoothing that out, don't want to see that afterwards, right? Even though I am printing a cover that goes over this, it'll be nicer not to have that. So yeah, let's get that cut off. Alright. Looks like I got a little deep with the cutting wheel. There's a little nick there, and then this one's a little bit deeper. So while I've got the welder out, might as well. Oh my, look, he can do it. He can do it all. Sometimes. She's welded. Probably super hot, probably very undercut weld. Is it good enough for what we're doing? Yes. Are you ever going to see this in the car? No. And if you did, 90% of people would be like, holy crap, that doesn't look bad. Also, worked a little bit like a pancake. You guys have seen most of this before. The tank, powder coated. I also epoxy coated the inside. You can see that here. Alright, because this is a steel tank, the air tank, I don't want it to rust on the inside with all the moisture and whatever, and I don't want that to get to the airbags and then potentially rupture one. So this is actually fuel tank sealer. The company has confirmed that it works for air compressors too. So you gotta block off all the ports, which I've done just with some duct tape and some rubber plugs. And then you pour this in, roll it around, make sure it coats the entire inside, rotate it like every 5 minutes for 30 minutes, and then drain out the excess. I've been mixing this stuff for 5 minutes already, and it's still not mixed, so I don't know what the deal is here, but once I finally get it mixed, I'll pour it in and then roll the tank around. I thought about like mounting the tank to the lathe and putting it on like the lowest geared setting, so it's like 2 RPM or something, but I don't have patience for that, so. Kind of pour most of it in here. Yep, that's a little over half. Alright, funnel. Great. Here's my plug. is an old plastic AN plug with some tape around it. Just tape it down, make sure it's sealed real well. I'm going to take these gloves off because I've got some of that silver crap on them. And I don't want to get it on the powder coat. Wow, this tape didn't really stick that well. Hopefully it works. Okay, I'm going to set a timer for 30 minutes, and I will come back every 5 minutes and flip her over, and then we'll drain it. Sick. The solenoid valve body has been on here for a while, so have all these fittings and hoses except for the supply hose for the manifold, just because I haven't figured out how I want to mount this extra water trap. But the things you probably haven't seen, there's 5 pressure sensors here, and they're all labeled, which is super awesome with this harness from Ruin. And now what I've got to do is hook up, this is the wiring harness that comes with the solenoid valve body, and the Ruin air harness is all labeled. And what I'm going to do is try to figure out how I want to connect all this. I think I'm just going to use a couple Deutsch connectors, because unfortunately it's 9 pins and not like 8 or 6 or something. So I'm going to use a 6 and I think a 3 over there. And drop my tools on the nice controller box. But yeah, so I'm going to run this up here. All of this is going to get cleaned up eventually, and I have a nice 3D printed cover that gets like some upholstery work done to make it look nice. Here is the Ruin air control box. This is the laser etched wood cover. Yep, and I think I've got another one. I've got a clear one that I think I'm actually going to put on here. So you can see through it, which will be cool. But yeah, so I'm going to chop up a bunch of these wires and get that wired in, and then I've got to add, I think, 2 relays. Luckily, I mean, you can kind of see over here. This is where the battery is in the trunk, which is really convenient. So I gotta wire up some relays for the compressors and for power for the control box. And then that all should work. And then I've got to run the lines to each of the corners now that the bags are installed. All right, I just posted this on Instagram, but this is not supposed to do this. This rubber mount here, I don't know how well you can see this, is supposed to be up in the steel mount. I pulled the other side off just a second ago, but our ride to and from Indy with all the crap in the back was just like super bouncy. And I had added some preload to these springs before we left just to like make it a little bit stiffer. And I turned the knobs. Well, I turned the knob on the other side because this one was already gone, and that should have been a clue. The knobs, like, because they're up in this mount, they have an extension. You have to drill a hole, and then it goes through the extension, and you tighten it with the little grub screw, whatever. I did that, and this one was just missing. The actual knob still on the struts, so that's, or on the coilover, that's fine, but there's not supposed to be a gap here. And what happened is basically we were just riding on the spring, so it was just doing this the whole way home. Every time we had a big bump on the highway, just whoa, 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 and there's nothing to damp the bouncing because that's what the shock does. So I just pulled the other side out, and yeah, 100%. It's exactly what happened. So I think this is my fault. I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to have a washer up here, just like this one down here. And I'll have to go check the other mount because I have one out of a Caprice that's not you know, I pulled out of a car to develop a billet version of these like I make for the front. What the hell? So the steel mount's supposed to be like pressed around this, but I do have sitting on the shelf, and those don't. Oh, the washers are good for that, I guess. Sitting on the shelf over there are the airbags that are supposed to go on here, replace the spring, and they showed up the last week. So we got back Sunday. We left Friday. We got back Sunday. Those things showed up like Monday, Tuesday. I'm like, I'm not risking putting those on. The first set they sent me didn't fit. I was like, I'm not taking the suspension apart to be able to try this. So now's as good a time as any. I'm waiting. Lance and I are going through some, like, swapping out spark plugs and wires and whatever, and chasing down. You know, the back of the car is, well, pretty gross. Just covered in soot. So it's running pretty rich, and we're gonna try to fix that. So while he's doing other stuff, I can do airbags and then wait for him. Wow, it's really sunny right now. But yeah, so I'm gonna pull this one out. The other side's already out. The front comes out way easier. The fronts are fine. You know, that part of the suspension worked. But luckily I don't think I damaged the petters at all, other than the lower mount just insanely loose. So I'm gonna get these taken apart so I can press this bushing, which honestly it's not in great shape, but I don't think you can get those anymore, into that steel mount after I pull that out, and then we'll see how the airbags are gonna work. So yeah, let's do it. This is how the coilover came out of the car. This is the steel mount that attaches to the body that the rubber piece is supposed to be inside of. And here's the extension for the adjustment knob. It kind of sucks because I only have one of these now. This side that was gone. But this is what the airbag on top of the coilover looks like assembled. It was pretty easy to get the bushing back into the steel mount. I sprayed it with like I got a little squeezy jar of like 15W50 motor oil, put it in the press, push it back in, no big deal. You see the big difference here, this guy. So I did take apart the stock Caprice one I have, and I really did just forget about the washer. Somehow, I don't know how, but somehow I forgot about the washer. And it's probably because I was rushing to put the coilovers on so I could move the wagon into the garage and keep working on it, blah, blah, whatever. Excuse. Anyways, so I did have to modify the top mount. That's pretty normal for doing something like this. The spring perch is welded onto the bottom. It's just stitch welded around, you know, like 2 or 3 minutes. The angle grinder cuts stitch welds off. That's like all these little welds here. So I gotta take that section off of this one, and then take this bushing, press it back into the top, disassemble all of this jazz, and the bags come like this, and there's 2 O-rings in the top, there's 2 O-rings in the bottom, and you just thread them onto here. 2 of the O-rings sealed down here, and my setup's a little weird. Like the Holden setup in general is a little weird. Normally this would go on, like this top O-ring section would just go right underneath these threads where it's, you know, not threaded. But because these have like a separate section that goes up into this mount, I had to have them make some extra custom goodies so that they sit below that, and that boot's all messed up, otherwise you'd be able to tell. But you can kind of see down in there where it's gold. That section has to come off, and that's where the adjustment knob goes. You can actually see the adjustment knob attachment part there, and obviously another big washer on top of that. But I needed them to go down here instead of sitting up here. And I mean, I guess I can talk about, so C2B technically sponsors me now. I think I bullied my way into that sponsorship. and not necessarily on purpose. I originally, that was like the third thing I ever ordered for the car back in May. Like I think it was May 13th, I placed that order. And so 3.5 months later, I got the parts. The first set I got, they only sent me the fronts because the backs weren't done yet. And these are the new fronts. I haven't tested them, but these didn't even fit in the shock tower. And I think what happened is I was just, the person I got in contact with wasn't who I should have been dealing with, really. But they originally quoted me 2 weeks for custom stuff. And I think if you had a standard set of coilovers for a normal car that didn't have, like, the Wagon's not small. Like, any of that platform is pretty heavy. I think the Wagon's 4,000 pounds. The shock shafts are bigger in diameter than what most aftermarket coilovers are, and so a lot of their tooling, I guess, is different. Also, the threads on the coilover body themselves are different. And really what happened is I got these after like 4 weeks. They didn't fit. The hole size is wrong. The O-rings were wrong. They tried to fix it by sending me some different O-rings. That's not how geometry works. You can't just fit like a bigger diameter O-ring in the same size slot and have it not like pucker or curl up. And these are supposed to seal air, so that's not gonna work. The engineer and me, not super happy about that. The machinist in me, you can hear the machine going in the background. I was like, all their pictures are anodized. You can tell the new ones are anodized. I didn't really care because I needed them quickly, right? I was trying to get the car on the ground or on the airbags. Like, I had everything in the back of the car. And so, you know, I got these, they didn't fit. They sent me some new O-rings that didn't work because you'd have to have a custom cross-section O-ring made for that to work. Can't use these for anything. I'll probably find something to do with them, I guess. But, the other thing is, you know, if I call and specifically ask for something custom, you say 2 weeks. That normally means two weeks to me, and I was on a 4-month deadline. Like, you know, every week counts. And so they ended up, you know, they refunded me a couple times. It's not like these are crazy expensive either, right? Like, I think their list price is like $900. I got them on sale for like $750. They refunded me a couple different times, which is what put me up to their sponsorship level. I think actually beyond it, because once I got in touch with the right person who was actually, you know, kind enough to try and help me figure this out and do the custom setup that actually will theoretically work. This actually goes together. I couldn't even get the other ones on, so if I can bolt this into the car and the car goes whoop whoop, then win, right? But that person was super kind enough to help me out, get it going. It sucks that I didn't have it for the unveiling, but you know, we got them now. I got another show in 2 weeks, 3 weeks maybe. Let's see, 1, 2, yeah, 3 weeks. I got plenty of time. I'm gonna have this done like tomorrow. But yeah, so you know, I got them now. That's great. The other crazy thing is, so when I was like, hey, this is what I really need, I offered to send them CAD models because I can do that. And I make the billet strut mounts for the front. Like, clearly I know what the geometry of the strut is. And the coilover, not really different. And I know how to use a pair of calipers. I think the problem is they have like one engineering person. It's not really an engineering person. It's an old dude that runs a manual lathe, and that's how they make all their parts. Which, first of all, these are really good for being made on a manual lathe. Nothing against that. Kudos to the old guy they got doing that. Also, feel bad for that because it seems like it's a bunch of 20-year-olds who are running the business, and if you're doing standard coilovers, you get parts shipped out like the next day because they make those in bulk. But if you want something custom, that old guy running the manual lathe got to come up with what to do. That being said, like, when I think they were like, okay, in 3 weeks, this is like after we finalized the design stuff, they're like, in 3 weeks, you're going to have these. And I was like, cool, that would have given me like 2.5 weeks to get them on the car for Indy. and then they didn't meet that deadline, and then the next week the band clamps here leaked, because they do pressure test their stuff, which is nice, but these leaked, so they had to re-clamp them. And again, I think that's that one old dude running the manual lathe that does all of the labor part of assembling these, so they couldn't just re-crimp them and test them again. I don't know, whatever. The other thing is, like, if you're like, hey, we're rushing to get you stuff, do not send your parts out for anodize. I don't care who you are, that is not a one-day turnaround time thing. When I take batch stuff, like the stuff that's machining right now, that's like minimum 3 days. I had some rush stuff done for the Datsun when I did those wheels for the auto show, and I think that was 3 days to polish the lips and anodize the centers. And that was 2 different places. So like, if you're trying to rush something and you've already sent me something that's raw aluminum, just send the raw aluminum one, man. I'm not trying to wait for you to anodize something black on something no one is ever gonna see except in this video, and I'm talking about it extensively because of just how ridiculous this was to try to get these. And the quality seems good. I'm not mad about that. I just, don't tell me it's 2 weeks if it's 4 months, right? Like, just, you know, just be honest with me. And also communicate significantly better. They don't respond to emails. They also don't answer the phone. They do respond to Instagram messages. Wish I'd have known that from the beginning. But yeah, the rears look like they're gonna work. I don't know how much travel I'll have. I cut the bump stop and I kept a third of it. It's also kind of beat up. The other one's probably also beat up. It's all shoved up against the top mount. But this is like pretty significant thickness. I'll be American and say that's like one digit deep instead of using actual number. Yeah, so that takes up probably almost the same amount as the top of the bump stop. I just, you know, metal to metal contact, not great. Have a little bit of cushion, but not make it so that there's only this much travel. But yeah, so what I'm gonna do, because I just ranted for a little bit, I'll probably edit that down pretty significantly so I'm not just, you know, destroying them after they technically sponsor me. But yeah, anyways, I'm gonna cut this off, take the adjustment knob off, take that apart, put this one on, put it back together like this, and then get them back in the car. And then I'll start on the front. That install went pretty easily. I didn't show the front because you've seen me do the coilovers on the front. All I did was take the spring off, thread on the airbag like I did for the rear, and then put it back together. So that wasn't super exciting, and I think it took a total of 10 minutes for both sides. So yeah. Cool part is the 5th pressure sensor here is for the compressor on-off, I believe. And so it's really nice. You don't have to have like a separate switch for that. It's just all controlled by the box, which is nice. And then the labeling here is pretty solid, so it makes it really hard to mess up. Based on everything else I've done so far, I don't know if I won't mess it up necessarily, but I'm gonna try not to. So yeah, I think I'm gonna strip all these, and because this harness is nicely wrapped up down here, probably leave it that way and leave this length, and then whenever I mount the control box up here in the 3D printed thing, then I'll do some wire wrap or something, I don't know. But yeah, so strip all these, put them in a connector, and then yeah, connect it. Okay, valve solenoid, manifold, thingy-majigger, all wired up. This will get wrapped after all this is done. And then there's 3 other wires here. One of them is battery ground, 12 volt in, and comp, which I'm gonna educated guess that's for the compressor relay signal, and I will have to go to their actual website and make sure. Most of the wiring here done. I'll show this over here when I get to it. I think that's really easy because there's so much space over there, and then I'm gonna route the wires. Probably one of these isn't glued in all the way, I don't think, and I might be able to go up the carpet and behind, but if not, I'll just wrap it and it'll go up one of the channels and under the foam into the battery compartment, and we'll be good to go. All right, I got everything I got everything wired up and plumbed in a way that I can at least test the system. So let's see. Solenoid manifold, great. These are the pressure sensors from Ruinair, sweet, labeled. This is the tank pressure sensor, sweet, labeled. These are the Deutsch connectors I added to this harness just to make it easier. That goes into the controller for the solenoids, awesome. That harness is just kind of loosely hanging here and goes into sweet box. This is the controller, the remote is up in the driver's seat. And then what else? So this is the power, ground, and compressor harness. And then back here, these are the compressor power wires. All of that goes straight over to here to the battery. I gotta clean this up a lot, but I had 2 relays, one for each compressor, and then they kind of pull power from what used to be this transmission module connector, or I mean trailer module connector, which I don't have a trailer module, so I just used that. It had a nice big 30 amp power wire, big beefy ground, and then a switched 12 volt, and there's like 2 other wires. One of them was a PWM something, whatever, doesn't matter. But so all that's hooked up, cool. Compressors, lines, water traps, and then back here, kind of hard to see, but all 4 of the airlines route right out, oops, the spare tire wall, and into each corner in the bags. So these ones route right down here. I gotta do some more strain relief, make sure it's not rubbing on stuff, but right now I can at least make sure it goes up and down, kind of see where things move to. The front ones route over the diff over to here. There's a nice big grommet. There's actually 3 of them on this side, but that runs all the way through the frame rail and comes out right here. Super simple. I got a strain relief this one too, but routes up and around and then goes right into the bag. So that'll be pretty easy and pretty slick. I did the same thing on the other side, and then to fish all this through, there's like a bunch of pieces of TIG wire on the ground over there that I just duct taped together. But that was pretty easy to do. So I think it took like, this side probably took like 20 minutes, the other side took like 5. So no big deal there. But bags are all in, which is awesome. Bags are in, lines are in. They need to be zip tied and whatever. The battery's kind of dead. I haven't figured out what exactly is draining it, but if I turn this on, oh, one more time. There we go. So now you can see the screen. It's still got the screen protector on it because my hands are filthy, but all I did, like, it got power from the cigarette outlet or the power outlet, and then it just immediately turned on and was connected to the controller already. You go on settings, there's a bunch of stuff. I turned on compressor control, that's why it's pumping up now. I did this already one time just to see if, things were working. I didn't want it to explode. But yeah, so you can see the tank is filling up with pressure, and the bags will eventually do the same. I was just gonna let the tank build first, and then see if I have each corner hooked up correctly. But it's really nice because there's a bunch of presets in here. I haven't even updated the firmware. I got this probably like 3 months ago now. Yeah, probably 3 months ago. So there's been a couple updates. But you can have multiple different presets. Like for me, I'd probably have one for like monster truck status for Michigan roads. Probably one for like dump in the back, and then I can lift it back up to like attach a trailer without having to move the trailer. And then probably just slammed, and I don't know, I have to figure out whatever the other 3 are, but pretty sweet screen setup without even adjusting anything, so this is pretty dope. and all I did was turn the car on and it started working. So that's a big plus, not having to figure anything out. I got to figure out a new place to mount this because the Turbo 400 guy is here, and that's probably only going to be in there for another month or so. But I gotta find something. So that's next on the to-do list. I'll probably just leave it plugged in and in the cup holder for the next, like for this weekend or something. But we'll go back here. And this is both compressors running really surprisingly quiet, and obviously I don't have the cover over it, but yeah. So this is also really cool. I've never had like an automated air controller before. I've only had, you know, stupid manual paddle valves, but like, let's see. The automated presets already have pressures in them, so front goes to 50 for mid and rear to 40. You can hear the solenoids going to town, which is kind of cool. Yeah, buddy. Sick.